Okay, so none of my technology was working today, so I am recording this on a little DJI. I wanted to give you guys a public service announcement when it comes to portfolio projects. Please do not do the Google Analytics certification project, the IBM certification project, or analysis on Airbnb data, bike share, cyclistic data, the Titanic dataset, the Iowa liquor sales dataset, or Superstore dataset as portfolio projects in the job hunt process. These projects are fine for self-learning, but they are just way too generic and commonplace to actually stand out in the job market. And also, more importantly, they kind of scream out the self-learn aspect, which doesn't really give hiring managers a lot of confidence in your ability to apply the skills to a real job. So you actually should be focusing on projects that are really relevant to a company business question. And as someone who has reviewed a lot of portfolio projects, either in the hiring process or also for students in my mentorship program, what I see basically across the board is that most aspiring data analysts and career transitioners really need to step up their portfolio projects in terms of the analytical rigor for the kind of analysis that they're doing in the projects. The business metrics that they include in those projects. So really thinking about what are the metrics that are really relevant to someone in the industry who would be hiring for this job. And also in terms of the professional polish. So how does the project actually look? How is it presented? Is everything really readable? Is it well formatted? Is it aesthetically pleasing? And does it use the best practices that we actually use on the job? So I'm going to be really real with you guys. A hiring manager is probably not going to spend more than 2 minutes looking at your portfolio projects. The portfolio itself is not what opens the door to interviews. That is what happens with the resume and the right level of networking. Portfolio projects, the real point of these projects is one, just to instill more confidence in the hiring manager that you have the skills that you're demonstrating in the interview process for them to just verify your quality of work. That's what happens for my students all the time. Where later on in the interview process, they took a look at their portfolio, they're really impressed, and they just feel even better about hiring this person. The other, which is more important, is that it gives you the confidence after you've worked with the tools as a system, you're learning the best practices, you're documenting all the work, that it's giving you the experience that you then need to talk about in interviews. So please don't go about these portfolio projects as if you're just checking a box, because it's a lot of time and energy spent on something that may not actually be helping you that much in the job market if you're not really focusing on building projects that really stand out. So I wanted to review some of your portfolio projects and just give you really honest feedback about how it resonates from a hiring manager's perspective. I am going to be very direct with my feedback because I think that that's what's going to help you guys the most. So today we're going to look at 3 different projects. There's one project which I would call a starting project. It has the bare bones, but it needs a lot more detail. The second project and portfolio website is getting closer. It shows a little bit more analysis that's more relevant to the job, but it doesn't really have the level of professional polish that we're looking for. The last example is actually an example from a student in my mentorship program that is a really standout example and is the kind of project that would really impress a hiring manager. So that's the one at the end. So I just wanted to just really say thank you to Randall, Rimpa, and Ruiz, all our names for some reason, for volunteering your guys' portfolios and just being willing to share it with the community. So thank you guys so much for that. I know there were a lot of other portfolios submitted, so I will be doing more of these in the future. So feel free to leave your portfolio in the comments below or send me a message on LinkedIn if you want your portfolio to be reviewed by me. Last heads up before we dive in, the next cohort of my mentorship program is now open to applications, so check out the link below if you want to take your project to the next level with me, and let's dive in. Are you guys ready? I'm going to dive into this first project, and just to give you a sense of what I'm going to be judging each portfolio on, one is the level of specificity and detail in terms of the actual insights and findings. The second is the professional polish. So how does everything look? Does it actually represent the way that I would probably present insights to a stakeholder at work? And then the third is the actual analytical rigor. So what were the techniques that you used? What was the approach? What's the thoughtfulness and how you actually discovered those insights and pulled everything to the surface? So thank you, Randall, for being the first one up. This is a performance analysis from 2018 to 2022 for Rainbow Retail. Now, first off, titles, just be mindful of this. You should actually title it something that represents, a real company and tell someone a little bit more about what the product is actually about. So for example, I would say something like Rainbow Retail Sales Performance Analysis 2018 to 2022. And then the project background overview. So South African e-commerce companies specializing in office supplies, furniture, and technology products demonstrated consistent growth. This analysis analysis examines KPIs and provides recommendations to improve business strategies and drive future growth within the competitive e-commerce landscape. Okay, so this background needs about 50% more detail. The frame of reference that you should be having all throughout your project is that you are someone who is a data analyst who works at this company, who is actually delivering insights to the stakeholder, and this is the actual document that you're giving them. And so in this situation, I would say something more like, the KPIs that we're investigating are these specific metrics. Recommendations will be used by the marketing and product team to better allocate marketing and product inventory resources. Insights are delivered to operations and product manager, something like that. That tells me a little bit more of why are you actually looking into this? Because when you say provide recommendations to improve business strategies, it's way too high level. It also sounds like it could have been generated by ChatGPT, right? Everyone is going to be saying the same thing. So be more detailed here. Project goals. So main objectives are to evaluate sales performance, identify key trends, and provide actionable recommendations. Now, this is okay on one level, just that, it's really too high level again. When we say evaluate sales performance, say a little bit more about why. To better understand blank and blank. Identify key trends and patterns. Again, why is that? And when you say sales data, what specific sales metrics are we actually looking for? And then actionable recommendations to who and for what purpose. Just make sure that you're not using terminology that is something that everyone in the data analytics space can say, because that's not going to help you stand out. Now, when it comes to data structure overview. So I like that Randall has this. I always think it's a good idea to show a snapshot of the data that you're actually working with. For this section, what you should do is you should take the perspective of a data analyst who is telling another data analyst what kind of data you're actually working with. This would show a hiring manager your technical understanding of relational databases and how you're actually able to document technical concepts. So, the insights themselves should be geared towards a stakeholder, a non-technical stakeholder, while the more technical things like data structure overview can get more specific. So, key data points include product data, sales data, and geographic data. These descriptions themselves are also just too generic. Someone should be able to look at your description and be able to back out what they think the table looks like. So for example, product data, looking at this product schema here, I would say something like reference table that includes product ID, product name, and subcategory. For sales data, I would say something like each unique record represents a sales transaction with information about the sales dates as well as the sales quantity and product. And then customers, and then do the same for calendar. So make sure you have a description for each table in the data set so that we can map one-to-one which table you're actually talking about. Data cleaning and transformation were conducted using Excel and SQL for enhanced analytical flexibility. Again, when you have these kinds of phrases that are really generic, I don't know what enhanced analytical flexibility means, and it doesn't tell me anything about your skills. So be more specific here about, why either what you did in each tool, or leave this to the technical section at the bottom, because this right now isn't really telling me that much. Executive summary. So when we say an executive summary, and we're going to talk more about this in the communication for stakeholder insights video that I will publish next week. So the exec summary should come from the perspective of your data analyst who's delivering like a 30-second overview of the most important metrics and most important stats to someone who's quite high level. You're like passing by the office and you're like, hey, finish the analysis. This is the most important stuff that I found. From that summary, they should have a much better understanding of the high-level trends and the actual values. So here we have Rimpa Retail has shown a steady upward trend in monthly sales and revenue, testament to its adaptability in an evolving e-commerce market. Tech products dominate revenue at 49%, furniture category underperforms at 3%. Sales are highly concentrated in major provinces with underserved regions showing growth potential. This report provides strategic recommendations to maintain market momentum, expand product offerings, and optimize regional performance. Again, I need like 50% more detail here. So when we say upward trend, what do we mean by that? Which months have the upward trend? There's definitely got to be some months that don't have an upward trend, right? So which months don't do as well? What is the overall growth rate when we say upward trend? And when we say technology products dominate revenue, furniture products underperform, what years are we actually talking about? Because someone is probably not going to care about all 4 years squished together. They want to know the actual values and how that has changed. So I would say something more so along the lines of overall what the average sales and revenue are across these months, what the average growth rates are, and then the best performing months and the worst performing months, and then the best performing categories, and then the best performing provinces. So actually say what those values are so someone knows that you really looked into the data. Now, insights deep dive. For the deep dive, this should be from the perspective of your data analyst who is conveying more technical and like day-to-day insights to someone who's really interested in the numbers. So it should be even more detailed than the executive summary. I like that this is broken up into different sections. So sales and revenue growth trend, product category performance, top selling products. It's very clear and easy for me as a hiring manager coming to this portfolio to just skim and get a sense of the things that you looked at. Let's look at the actual insights. Now, this is the most important part of the project. Okay, so spend a lot of time, and most of the time on the project, most of the time on the project will probably be spent on data cleaning at first, but then really focus on getting unique, tangible insights that you would be proud to say in an interview. If someone asks you, what kind of insights and findings did you find in your most recent data project? You want to be able to show something that is interesting and specific to the analysis that you did. So in this case, the insight is monthly sales and revenue exhibit a robust upward trend despite economic challenges. Again, way too generic here. A lot of people could say this, but it doesn't really show me that you actually looked at the actual data. So here I want to see the actual numbers, the actual growth rates, the months and the products that do well or badly, and be more specific. Now, I would say the main challenge with most projects is how realistic the data set is itself. I can take one look at this and it's very obvious to me that this is really artificial data, which counts as points off in terms of, how company relevant this project is. So what I recommend is if you were doing an analysis on any kind of financial metric, so in this case, sales and revenue, then what you can do is actually use the stock market as a proxy, where you can get and download stock market prices and notice the kind of volatility and ups and downs that these graphs have. It's a lot more interesting and insightful than something like this, which isn't really realistic in terms of the kind of growth that a company would experience. So what I would recommend, Randall, is actually to take a stock market price, impute your sales data with those values instead, and then you will have much more interesting findings to report that will really stand out if you can talk about them in an interview. So that's really important. Make sure that the data set itself looks more realistic rather than something that has ups and downs from which you won't really have that much to report. Then in terms of the axes, now for professional polish, make sure everything is really readable. I should not have to really zoom in to be able to see what the labels are. So these labels need to be much bigger, and the screenshots should also be much clearer. Now let's go down to product category performance. So my feedback on all the insights is pretty much the same about how there needs to be like 50 to 60% more detailed, more of a deep dive so that I can really see that you dived into the data. In terms of the actual visualization, this is very important, okay? We do not use pie charts at work. I don't know why more resources do not talk about this, but we never use pie charts at work, and I'll tell you why. Pie charts are not that helpful. They combine all of this data into one snapshot where I cannot see anything over time. Think about it. So here I have 4 different categories, and it's telling me across 4 years, this is the split of these 4 categories. No one's gonna make business decisions off of all 4 years combined together. Normally, we would look at the actual trend and understand how is this actually moving and is that good or bad. Whereas the pie chart, it just shows me one snapshot in time, which is also why we would never put it in a dashboard because it probably isn't changing over time. And even if it is, we can't see that change because it's just one dimension. So what is a better visualization than a pie chart? It is an area graph. If you think about it, a pie chart squished over time is an area graph. So there's 2 different kinds of area graphs. There's an area graph that looks like this, which still shows you the absolute value of the top line trend. So the overall trend where I can just still see the top line number. So I could split up the sales by category using this kind of graph, or if I wanted to see the distribution, I would use this kind of area graph, where we call this a mixed graph at work. And this shows me out of the whole pie, what % came from those different categories. Top selling products. So in terms of the visualization itself and visuals in general, you need to really think about whether or not your visualizations are telling a story. Lots of people can make a bar graph like this. So it's not really going to help you stand out if you just keep having visuals that show like one dimension at a time, right? Products, and then this pie chart over here, which is categories. we usually would be looking at things over time. I mean, any kind of trend analysis, you should really be looking at something over time. And so instead, I would have taken the top 5 products. I would have grouped all the other products as one remaining category, and then I would have shown that as a line graph by month over time so that I could give more specific insights about which products are doing well in the more recent months. Similar with province, same commentary there in terms of showing it by time and being more specific about the actual values in the insight. Okay, now let's jump into the recommendations. So for these recommendations, expand technology offerings, leverage strong demand for technology products to maintain market leadership. Your recommendations here should be tied to an insight that you had above. I need to be able to see the link between what you found and what you're actually suggesting. Right here, there's a bit of a jump. It's basically just saying leverage strong demand for technology products, which has been 49%. So instead, what you should do is actually list the exact products and also give a reason why. So tie it back to the finding before. So something like, given the upward trend in electric letter openers and blank in the technology category, consider reallocating marketing budget for the next 2 years to focus on these products. And then the same basically goes for all these other recommendations. Again, ask yourself, is this something that in an interview, if someone asked you about, you could be specific enough about the actual values and translate it to someone who wants to know what they should actually do from your findings. Lastly, I like that the technical details are down here, but you should actually link to your work because someone is going to want to check the technical process that you did. And so link the actual SQL scripts and then the actual Excel workbook and also include them in the repository. And then at the end, caveats and assumptions. This is where you should put notes about the data cleaning process that you did and any assumptions you had to make about the data. I would take this out. You don't need to mention that it's synthetic data because people already know that portfolio projects are sample data sets, so you don't really need to call more attention to that. And then lastly, you guys don't need to have a conclusion. Usually at work, we're not like writing a conclusion for our projects when we're done. It's like we would hand it off to a stakeholder, we kind of decide that the project has moved on to its next stage, but we wouldn't write it as if it was a story, right, with a conclusion at the end. So my overall feedback for you, Randall, is to really dive into more detail, 50% more detail. And then also for the visualizations, use visualizations that tell more of a story by adding the dimension of time to it. And then also replace the underlying sales data with something that's more representative of real company ups and downs and volatility, like the stock market data. One more note about ERDs. So this ERD right here, it should actually show the joins. You can use something like dbdiagram.io, which I will drop in the description below, to generate a professional looking ERD. Okay, let's dive into the next project. So this next one is from Rimpa. I really hope I'm saying your name right. I am sorry if not. And she has a portfolio website, as many of you guys do. So I thought it'd be interesting to actually show this one and share my thoughts here. So this is Rimpa's site. She has an About Me section, a bit about the technical skills, resume, education, certifications, projects, and then a little bit of a footer here. First impressions. You really want to make sure that the most important stuff is at the top. Even though this really looks nice, really try to put yourself in the shoes of a hiring manager who's like, okay, show me what are you actually working with, let's get right to it. So in this case, I always recommend you can have an About Me section at the top, just get to the About Me, and then have your projects as the next section down. And then you can go into the other stuff like resume and certifications. Just so you guys know, and I do talk about this like a lot in my program and info sessions, certifications don't really count for much. They don't really show that you actually know how to do something, and so only have them if they are very like specific certifications. So for example, Accenture North America data analytics and visualization job simulation, because that's a bit more unique. I think it's fine to include this one, but do not put like the GA certification or IBM certification on your portfolio website. Okay, and then so I would have the About Me up here and then just dive right into the projects. This section, I would say don't do this, mostly because it's really hard to calibrate yourself. Like, even as someone who's been in the industry for 9 years myself, I would not put myself at 90% SQL or 90% data visualizations. There's just so much more to always learn and know about these tools that it's really, really difficult to put yourself at like 90% as someone who's breaking into the industry. So just take this out. It's just a bit too subjective. And then let's dive into the actual projects. Okay. So project titles, just a note here, don't have something like data analysis using MySQL. Again, it should be more descriptive. So anchor it in a company name and the analysis itself. So this could be something like Adventure Works sales performance analysis, and then have the years. That makes it a little bit more realistic. And when you have descriptions of projects, don't talk about the technical stuff like I analyze this data using dashboards. Again, someone else can easily say I use data to create dashboards. What you actually want to say is the insight and recommendation. So insights geared towards marketing team to better allocate marketing budget over the next few years based on sales performance for whatever the metrics are here. I have to dive in to actually see what it's about. But I'm just using marketing data because it's a really easy example that everyone understands, but just ground it in the so what so that someone actually wants to dive in. Okay, let's dive in now. Okay, so this is the GitHub page. First impressions, let me just take a really quick scroll through. So first of all, the length of this project is pretty good. It's basically like 2 pages, I would say, 2 printed pages of insights and findings. A lot of times projects are just way too short or they're way too long. So this is the right level in terms of the length. Now, in terms of the emojis, I would just take those out. Again, you are coming from the perspective of a data analyst who is at work actually giving this to another stakeholder. Let's look at the overview. So in this project, we explored the multifaceted data of AdventureWorks to gain comprehensive insights into our sales dynamics. Through meticulous analysis, we aim to understand the various aspects of our customer interactions, order patterns, performance, and product performance, not performance, and return metrics. The ultimate goal was to harness these insights to drive strategic decisions and optimize business operations. I swear, I think I see the word strategic in like every single project. So just be wary of having claims like strategic decisions and optimized business operations without going into more detail. Our analysis is visualized through 4 key dashboards, and then we have the dashboard names. So Rimpa, I like that you actually have the names of metrics. So order patterns, performance, product performance, and return metrics. That's good. This is still, I would say, a little bit too like high level, and it's more so claiming rather than showing what you're actually going to be looking into. And by that, I mean, you have a bunch of adjectives here. So multifaceted data, comprehensive insights, meticulous analysis. At work, we wouldn't be like demonstrating our work to a stakeholder in this way, right? We wouldn't be claiming things about our analysis. We would just let the analysis do its own talking. So I would remove these adjectives and then also get someone to read the rest of it by being more specific about what the recommendations are actually for. So ultimate goal was to harness these insights to drive strategic decisions about blank for the blank team. That's how you anchor into something more relevant. Let's go to the objectives: customer segmentation and profiling. So to identify and understand the characteristics of our top customers, including demographics, purchasing behavior, and contribution to sales. Product performance analysis to assess how different products perform in terms of sales, returns, and overall contribution to revenue. Return analysis and growth insights. So I would say overall, these objectives are pretty good in that like every company probably has these kinds of objectives. One thing to note is that all 4 of these objectives in one project, it's kind of a lot to really do each of these 4 different categories justice in one project. It's better to have breadth rather than breadth. Okay. Let me try this again. It's better to have depth rather than breadth in your portfolio projects, where the insights themselves are rigorous, that they have a lot of detail to them, rather than keeping it really high level and covering many different topics. So I would have chosen maybe just these first 2 objectives, really dive into those and say that these insights are used for, let's say, a product team. Who would then use your findings to really think about like what kind of customers should we be targeting in terms of our marketing and in terms of the kinds of products that we have. But overall, this is decent as listing your objectives. So data description. Our analysis is based on a rich data set encompassing several key aspects of our business ops. So again, just take out the adjectives and then dive right into the details. This is where I would include the ERD, so make sure you have a visual that shows the data set. It's just nice because it shows someone that you know a little bit about these concepts, about how relational databases are actually represented on the job. Customer details. This data set includes comprehensive information about our customers, such as their demographics, geographic location, and buying habits. By analyzing these details, we can profile our ideal customers and understand their preferences. Let's skip down to product details. So information about each product, including product categories, pricing, and sales performance is included here. This data set allows us to evaluate which products are most popular and profitable. So see this level of detail? This is good. This shows me as a manager that you know how to actually describe data sets. And that's something that we need to do on the job all the time when we're working with other analysts and other engineers. Now let's get to the actual meat, which is what I'm always interested in, which is the actual insights. I think this is just a repeat of what we already had in the objective, so I wouldn't really have this. I would actually replace this with an executive summary. So Rimpa, here I would ask you, okay, if I was just, passing by you at work and I was asking you, how is this analysis going? What have you found so far? What would be your 30-second takeaway of your insights? Product performance key insights. So already I can tell that these insights are much more detailed than the last project, which is great. This is more of the level of detail that we're looking for. So for example, overall performance. AdventureWorks achieved a total order quantity of 84,000, which with an average order value of 27K. Standout product was this, known for its high profitability and strong sales across all regions, consistently emerged as the most ordered product. The only thing is I'm not sure which time period this data set is. So that is a very important detail in your analyses. You always need to ground it in what time period we're actually looking at, because that determines the relevance of this data set to me as a stakeholder right now. Most of the time, we're not going to summarize an entire data set and just give one value. So for example, I wouldn't summarize like all 4 years, the order quantity is 84K. I would more so say the range of order quantity is from this to this. Most recently, the average is this. So show a little bit more of those trends. Product performance. Now let's look at this dashboard. A struggle that I typically notice in portfolio projects is that dashboards almost always, they just trying to show way too much. And I think this is because when you look at Tableau Public, you see these dashboards that look like they belong in the Modern Museum of Art, but we are not using dashboards like that at work. What you should focus on instead is how clear are the main takeaways, and is there a reason for every single tile on this dashboard to exist? Most of the time, I would suggest to not have more than 9 different tiles, or boxes, I would say, in a dashboard. So I think here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's just really busy because we also have all of this and all of this. So just to call out, on one hand, I think it's great that these numbers are so large because they make the most important metrics known. However, there's a lot of other stuff going on at the same time, and I'm not really sure what is the most important thing. So for me as a stakeholder, for example, this is the same as a pie chart. It's a square, but it's the same as a pie chart. We do not need a visualization like this because, again, it doesn't show me much. It just shows me these are what the values were across all of these different years. Also, when it comes to delivering visualizations to stakeholders, you usually do not need 2 decimal points. If you keep in mind that we're really looking for overall trends and overall understanding, this is just making the dashboard look really busy. The other thing that makes the dashboard look really busy is unnecessary lines. So take out the borders here and just have shading in each of the tiles. That will make it look a lot more clean. And then lastly, just consider, do you really need to italicize, bold, and underline this? Why are some of these bold? Why are some of these underlined? Some of these are italicized and other ones aren't. So just be really consistent so that your dashboard looks really clean. I will probably make a video about dashboard design that shows you guys the kind of dashboards that we actually deliver to really high-level stakeholders at work so that you can see what I'm talking about. Before right now, just ask yourself, is there a reason every single tile on this exists? Do I really need this kind of formatting? And how can I make it look more sleek and more clean so that the insights themselves really pop out? Okay, now my comments for the dashboards on the rest of Rimpa's projects are pretty much consistent. I'm just going to ignore that we have this pie chart here, but now you know that we're not going to use pie charts, so please take that out. And we also probably don't need the logo there. It just kind of takes up space, and it's not something that really makes your project stand out. So I would actually use that more for an insight. But again, it's really busy here, lots of lines, so just think about whether or not this is necessary. The other thing to think about for dashboards is usually we're building dashboards so that we can look at data in a more dynamic way, where we can see how things changed over time. Now, most of the time, your ideal customer profile is not going to change that much over time. Like, it takes a lot for a company's ideal customer profile to really shift. Is the average age, the average income, and the average sale per customer really going to shift that much where we need a dashboard for it? If not, I would actually just keep this to high-level insights that are more like fun facts and tidbits for a stakeholder to know, but it wouldn't make sense to have it in something like Tableau or Power BI, which is used more for day-to-day and monthly tracking. Okay, now let's go down to the conclusion section. So strategic focus for continued success, enhance customer engagement and key demographics, improve product quality to reduce returns, leverage regional strengths by replicating successful strategies in underperforming areas, and optimize return management with stricter quality controls. So I like that you have this top line overview here, and then you actually dive into the specifics. This is really nice because this shows me, okay, high level overview, which one of these am I interested in? And let me read more about that here. Focus on increasing sales in regions with lower average contributions like Central USA by targeting high income demographics and improving product offerings. This is pretty good in terms of the level of specificity. I would just actually include what are the high income demographics and what are the product offerings. You don't want someone as a stakeholder, for example, to be like, okay, thanks for the recommendation. What specifically are you talking about? And then they have to go back to your dashboard. As a data analyst, that's your job. Your job is communicating exactly what you discovered and what someone should do about it. Okay, and then at the end, we have the dashboards actually linked here. Just make sure your dashboard or your links are clean. So just say the live dashboards here and have the word here be the actual hyperlink. Overall, great job with this Rimpa. What I would say is where you can really improve is one, the professional polish. So just cleaning up the actual formatting, cleaning up the actual dashboards, and then also in the recommendations, just include a little bit of a tie back to the insights that you found. So be more specific so that someone doesn't have to go back and forth between this section and your dashboards. Okay, let's move on to the last example, which is a standout example from someone who's in the current cohort of my mentorship program and see what exactly he's doing. So I want to walk you through a really good example and what impresses me about this as a hiring manager. First of all, About Me section is cool. It just talks a little bit more about his specific insights or his specific experience, shows a little bit more of his personality and his domain knowledge. And then him and I talked about the fact that we should split his projects into stakeholder projects and personal projects so that it shows that you actually know the difference. One of the most common mistakes that I see aspiring data analysts make is that they mix all their projects together. So they have a bunch of learning projects, they show that on their resume, and immediately when someone were to look at that, they would kind of come to realize that you're mostly self-learned and that your projects don't have real business value. And so having this kind of split just signifies, okay, yeah, I've done a bunch of stuff for learning, but then these are the kind of insights that I would deliver to a real stakeholder. And then at the bottom, he has his certifications. So let's dive into one of his projects. He has mentioned the tags of the tools used, the project itself, and then a link also to the more technical README in GitHub, which is great. I really love this table of contents section. Because his analysis is quite detailed, he has this table of contents section to just orient someone around everything that he's done and make it easy for someone to go through what they're interested in. The way this table of contents looks also is pretty similar, I would say, to how we would have a project write-up on the actual job. So we have the background, exec summary, insights deep dive, and then I go into the actual categories of the deep dive, the recommendations, clarifying assumptions and caveats, and then questions for stakeholders prior to project advancement. That's basically the requirements gathering phase. So this is great. Let's look at the project background. So global e-commerce company specialized in selling popular electronics products, partnering with the head of operations to extract insights and deliver recommendations to improve performance across sales, product, and marketing teams. So it's great that we actually ground it in an actual team so that I know that it would be relevant to someone who's at my company. Now, for Ruiz, he goes right into the executive summary. So sales analysis of 108K records across these years shows annual revenue stabilizing at around 7 million, nearing pre-COVID levels, with North America and EMEA contributing 80% of sales. Monitors and AirPods account for 60% of revenue, but customer retention is a concern as unique and repeat purchases have declined. ByteX can benefit from expanding top product lines, optimizing bundling, and enhancing loyalty programs to increase customer lifetime value. Targeted growth in APAC and LATAM, along with improvements to digital channels like the mobile app, will strengthen ByteX's market position and drive sustainable growth. Now think about all of the metrics that he's explained here. So purchase rates, annual revenue, and then let's see what else. Digital channels, so that's a dimension, and the actual values. This is a really good executive summary. Then we have the ERD here that shows the joins and the different data types. Let's get into the insights deep dive. So sales trends and growth rates. ByteX averages 7 million in annual sales with 27K orders per year. Sales surged in 2020 due to the pandemic, but declined by 45%, returning to just above pre-pandemic levels. Shows seasonality with peak sales in November and December and lower sales in February and October. And then North America and EMEA contribute 80% of sales, with the US alone accounting for 50%. These are great insights. They're all grounded in a specific value and a specific metric. One thing I would say, this is really just to go above and beyond, is that right now they're a little bit piecemeal. It's like, here's this sales metric, and then here's this sales metric, and then here's that sales metric. See if you can actually tie this together to tell a little bit more of a story, so that someone can get a more cohesive understanding of what are the overall trends, rather than being like, this is what it was in this year, and this is what it was in this year. Okay, now when it comes to the actual visualizations, let's look at this. So first of all, this kind of table is quite interesting. We have the three main metrics, and then we see the actual growth rates. So I talk about that in my EDA video, the thought process behind that. Now this visualization is also quite interesting. We have a line graph where we see for every single month the different years and how those years have trended. So it tells us a few different things. We can see across the different years, are there specific months that constantly had a peak, and also which years performed the best and which years performed the worst compared against each other. Then we also see the growth rate, where this is showing the month over month growth rate. So for example, negative 55%. This is showing that for 2022, which is this red line here, this is a 55% dip from the last month. The actual thought process behind this visualization is very good. It shows the overall trends, it shows the monthly ups and downs. The only thing I would say for improvement here is that it's a little bit confusing because of the colors that we use. So, and also, sorry, I'm being blinded again. Because we use similar colors here, we have red and green here, we have red and green here. As someone who maybe, let's say, is new to this visualization, I might get confused that these two things are actually associated with each other. It also looks a bit busy. I really have to kind of like sit and really think about what it's saying to interpret the values. So my recommendation, whenever you're using a lot of color schemes and things start getting a little bit messy, is to go monochrome. So for example, we could have actually used a monochromatic color scheme here, all blues, and then a monochromatic color scheme here, all grays, to still show, one, that there's a separation between these two graphs, but then still highlight the good and bad. So an example of this looks like this. I just did this in Tableau. Let me see if I can move this. So I just did this in Tableau, where just as a draft, I have all blue here and then all gray here. And the dark gray represents the bad months. So my eye is drawn to that so I can still see, okay, which months did badly. But then overall, it's a lot more clean and sleek. And it just kind of, looks a little bit more tech forward. And then I would actually just include a legend on the side and have a small note where I would say, the bottom table represents the month over month growth rate between each of the 4 years, right? So you don't need to use labels to explain every single thing. You can have a caption to keep the visualization itself clean. So if I compare this one to this one, I think the top one just looks a little bit more nice. So that's what I would recommend there. Okay, moving on. I'm gonna jump down to the loyalty performance section. So just a quick note about these visuals. When it gets messy, again, same thing as what I said to Rimpa, pay attention to the lines. Probably don't need these lines, they're a little bit distracting. And then also rename the columns here so that they're really clear. I mean, these names are actually okay. Non-loyalty, loyalty, there's a lot going on. That's the only thing I would say. So maybe taking out the lines would make it a little bit more clean. Same thing with the decimals. We probably do not need these decimal points. We are not making any business decisions off of the 100th decimal point in the percent, so you can take those out. I like these line graphs, and notice how Ruiz has made it really clean, because even though it's on a monthly level, he has only shown the yearly tick marks, which is fine, because this really just, I'm really just looking at this to look at the overall trends of non-loyalty program versus loyalty program. I'm not looking at it for absolute values of what happened in June of every single year. So one thing about just keeping your projects looking really clean and polished, be mindful about whether or not your visualizations are consistent in terms of sizing and coloring. So, here we have some lines around it. Here we don't have lines around it. Here, this table is really, really big. This is super nitpicky. This is honestly just if you're like, okay, I want to make my project look as beautiful as possible. So just be mindful of the sizing and the coloring and things like that to be consistent between each of them. Now let's go down to the recommendations. So expand high performing categories, increase catalog variations in monitors, AirPods, and laptops to meet diverse customer needs with premium models, driving repeat purchases and solidifying market presence. I like the specificity here, and I like the reason why. And I would say these are pretty directly tied to the insights above. You can kind of see where he's gotten these recommendations from, so you don't need to actually list all the numbers and all the insights again. This is how I feel about most of the recommendations here. What I would say is Ruiz also has some background in marketing analytics, and he's really flexing that knowledge here, which is great. If you have domain knowledge in any industry, you should pick projects where you can really showcase this domain knowledge if that domain knowledge is relevant to the companies that you're applying to. So for example, a lot of people want to work in healthcare or finance or product. Like if you have any experience there, really showcase your specific knowledge of those metrics in your write-up. And then lastly, clarifying questions, assumptions, and caveats. So I like that he actually documented the questions that he would go back and forth with a stakeholder on, and he's showing that the data isn't perfect. So unmatched customer ID records. Which table should be the primary source for customer ID to maintain data consistency across analyses? He's kind of showcasing the reality of working with messy data and how he would think through those questions on the actual job. So just keep in mind that the real value of these projects is in actually doing them. Even if you copy and pasted any of these projects and just kind of like, checked off a checkbox, it wouldn't help you at all, because you need to learn the thought process behind the approach, behind the documentation, behind the questions, behind data cleaning, and actually exploring the data itself. So that's why I suggest as soon as you have the technical fundamentals, do not keep doing these kinds of projects in a vacuum. Actually go out there, try to find real data sets, real companies, unpaid internships, volunteering opportunities where you can use real data and then deliver those insights to real people. I know this is something that's very difficult to do. There's so many resources online that you have to piece together on your own to make this all happen, which is basically why I built the Analytics Accelerator, because there's, I think, no other resource that packages all of this in one place. So check out the link below to find out more about that. And I think I'll do more videos like this if this is something that you guys find helpful. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.